It is transfer portal season, and the Texas Longhorns have their eyes on 3 priority targets who could all start for Texas heading into the SEC in 2024.
You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Longhorns, the show. Jonathan Davis, your host. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match of up to $100. That is daily fantasy sports made easy. On today's episode of Locked On Longhorns, we are discussing some of the priority targets for the University of Texas for their 2024 football team. 3 targets who could potentially be starters for Texas in 2024. They're that good. Then in the second segment, we were talking about Jayden Daniels, your 2023 Heisman winner, the quarterback from LSU. Did the Heisman voters get it right? And in the last segment, some of the other college football awards that caught my eye: the Biletnikoff, the Doak Walker Award, and of course the Outland Trophy winner, Texas' very own T'Vondre Sweat. All of that and more on today's episode of Locked On Longhorns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So as a Texas fan, this is such a weird time of the season for me because all I can think about, I'm hyper-focused, tunnel vision, is Sugar Bowl, right? I'm thinking Sugar Bowl playoff, Sugar Bowl, Michael Penix Jr., Romeo Odunze. How are we going to stop them, Washington, January 1st, right? Like, that's all I'm thinking. That's all my mind can process when I'm thinking about Texas and football, right? But it's also like we're in this in-season free agency period where we still have games to go, but everybody has to figure out what things are going to look like in 2024, right? So we have all of these athletes entering the transfer portal, trying to figure out their destinations for 2024. We have all of these coaches working the transfer portal, right? Trying to figure out where they're going to fill holes on their roster in 2024. And then we also seen Steve Sarkisian, who is working the transfer portal, boots on the ground out there on the field, in person, right, doing high school recruiting. We saw him over the last week in Alabama at the high school state championship game, looking at 2025 Texas commit quarterback KJ Lacey. And then Steve Sarkisian and some of the other staff members were also at South Lake Carroll and DeSoto over the weekend, right? So like I said, all I'm thinking about is the Sugar Bowl. I know all fans are thinking about is the Sugar Bowl, maybe a little bit transfer portal mixed in, right? But Steve Sarkisian is out doing the other half of his job that he does as an elite level, is recruiting, right? And then eventually they'll get to the ramp up and start solely focusing on, the playoffs and the Sugar Bowl on January 1st and trying to get, Texas their 6th national championship. When we look at Steve Sarkisian, one of my favorite quotes from him, it came over the offseason, was in that pivot interview he did with Ryan Clark and the guys. And one of my favorite quotes ever, he said, "Adapt or die," right? In reference to the transfer portal and NIL, basically saying that is just the new era of college football. That's just what college football is today. And, like dinosaurs, you either have to adapt or die, right? And Steve Sarkisian has certainly done a really good job of adapting, right, to the new era of college football and using NIL and the transfer portal to build a powerhouse at the University of Texas. On the contrary, we look at somebody like Clemson and Dabo Swinney, who won 2 national championships in 3 or 4 years, whatever it was. But now when you look at Clemson, that looks like a completely different program, partly because Dabo Swinney has snubbed his nose at NIL and the transfer portal. Adapt or die, right? And that's why Steve Sarkisian has Texas as one of the top teams in college football, because he has been able to recruit at a high level and he has used NIL and the transfer portal to his benefit. And most of the time when you get a player in the transfer portal, they provide, some type of, impact to the team. But most of the time, it's not a huge impact, right? It's rare that you get home runs out of the portal. And not every time that you lose a player to the transfer portal is a detriment. And I think Texas has done a really good job over the last 3 years of not losing any players that were huge factors on the team or players that we did not have, a plan in place to replace those players with, right? So we've done a really good job of managing the transfer portal and it being a net positive for the Longhorns. And not only has Steve Sarkisian brought in just contributors to the team, he's hit some home runs in the portal, right? Quinn Ewers 2, maybe 3-year starter at the University of Texas who has taken them to a Big 12 championship and a college football playoff appearance. That's an A+ get. Adonai Mitchell, who came over and was a wide receiver 1 for you this year, stepped in as an alpha receiver next to Xavier Worthy. That was an A+ get. Ryan Stanford, who we don't talk about at all, who came from Stanford, one of the best punters in the country. That was an A+ get. And then Ryan Watts, even though he was, injured this year, wasn't as productive this year as he was last year, I think getting a corner that played at that high of a level in Power 5 football, I still give that an A. So he has hit some true home runs in the portal. That's why Texas is where they are as a program right now. And right now, he is looking at 2024 and who could be that next home run hit, right? Or who could be that next target that I bring into this 2024 Texas football team that might be able to get us or take us over the hump, right? So 3 priority players who are really good that Texas is looking at who have been linked to Texas as they entered their names in the transfer portal. One is Trey Moore from UTSA. He is an edge rusher, a redshirt sophomore, listed at 6'3", 235. And I think this is a huge position of need for Texas. I know the defensive line was really good this year. Ethan Burke, Barron Sorrell, and of course, Devondre Sweat and Byron Murphy balled out, right? And they still are balling out because they still have games to play. But when you look at it, Ethan Burke led the team this year, or so far, with 5.5 sacks. Barron Sorrell and Ethan Burke combined this year for 9.5 sacks. Trey Moore in 12 games, right, 1 less game than Texas played, broke the single season sack record at UTSA with 14, right? He had 3 different games this year with 3+ sacks, and he had 16 explosive plays total with 14 sacks, 1 interception, and 1 forced fumble, right? So 14 sacks from Trey Moore, 9.5 sacks from Barron Sorrell and Ethan Burke combined, right? So I think Trey Moore can definitely be an asset for this Texas football team in 2024. And the 3 most important positions in football are the person that passes the ball, the quarterback, the person that protects the person that passes the ball, the left or right tackle, and the person that's trying to prevent the quarterback from passing the ball, and that's the edge rusher, right? You could never have enough edge rushers. You could never have enough talented edge rushers that can go and get the quarterback, and Trey Moore certainly can do that because he did it 14 times this year. And when you look at your projected edge starters for 2024, Colin Simmons is an all-world recruit, but he's a true freshman. Do you want to put that type of pressure on him to be a full-time starter in, his first year in the SEC and Texas's first year in the SEC? That's not ideal. And then Ethan Burke is really good, right? And should be even better next year. But that doesn't mean that Trey Moore can't play next to him or be a slight upgrade over him, right? So when we look at it, we definitely need edge rushers for 2024. I think we need edge rushers that can truly make a difference. And 14 sacks is truly making a difference. Trey Moore is a huge need for this Texas football team. And hopefully he'll end up in the burnt orange and white playing in Texas for 2024. All right, now we're looking at Andrew Mukuba, the safety from Clemson. He is 6 foot, 190 pounds. At least that's what he's listed as. Originally from Austin, went to LBJ High School. And over his 3 years at Clemson, where he started all 3 years, he has 142 tackles, 17 pass breakups, and 1 interception. And he has started for a defense at Clemson that has ranked 2nd in 2021, 21st in 2022, and 24th in 2023 in scoring the last 3 years. So all 3 years he was a starter at Clemson. That was a top 25 scoring defense, peaking as high as 2nd in the country in scoring defense in 2021. He was the first true freshman defensive back to start a season opener game at Clemson since 1972. Right? So that tells you not only how good of a football player he is, but how good of a person he is if he can step in right away at a program like Clemson as a true freshman and do something that had not been done since 1972. And then when you look at his Pro Football Focus grades for this year, 2023, he had a 77.1 pass coverage grade, which is elite, and a 64.7 run defense grade, which is really good. So he can come down in the box and stop the run as well. An all-around safety from the Austin area who could very well end his football career in the Austin area. Projected starters at safety in 2024, I think Derek Williams will have a starting safety spot the way that he played this year, and the athleticism and the playmaking that he showed. And then at the other spot, I'm not sure if it's going to be Michael Taft or it's going to be Keaton Crawford or it's going to be somebody I'm not thinking about right now. But that certainly tells me that we could use some help at the safety position in the transfer portal. And Andrew Mukuba would be a really good addition to this Texas football team who could step in, start right away, and be a plus defender for us. And then On the offensive side, we're looking at Matthew Golden, a wide receiver out of Houston. He has been linked to Texas as well since he entered his name in the transfer portal, listed at 6 foot, 190 pounds. He entered the transfer portal after 2 years at the University of Houston. Daniel Holgorsen being let go at head coach. They also let go of the receiver coach, maybe a big reason why he's in the portal. Over his 2 years at Houston, he has 76 catches for 988 yards and 13 touchdowns in just 2 years at U of H. So a very explosive player. He had 200-plus yard games in 2022, did not crack the 100-yard plateau in 2023, but he did have 7 catches for 88 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Texas Longhorns in 2023 in that 31-24 game at U of H. That was a nail biter for no reason in conference play. So Texas fans have seen firsthand how explosive Matthew Golden can be, and who knows, right? Maybe he'll be even more explosive in Steve Sarkisian's system if he picks the Texas Longhorns to commit to. Now, when we look at the projected starters at the wide receiver position for 2024, you know that you're losing Adonai Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, and Jordan Whittington to the NFL draft, right? And so you have Jonte Cook, right? One of the most talented, true freshmen in the country this year at that position. He should take that next step and be a huge contributor for this team. DeAndre Moore, right? We saw him get in garbage time throughout the year. He should be a really good player for this football team next year. But I don't know who your third starter at wide receiver is going to be, and I really don't know who your top 3 to 5 rotation is going to be at wide receiver. So you can certainly upgrade at that position in the transfer portal, and that's why they're looking at Matthew Golden. And I think he would be a need and a huge get for this Texas football team. They're also looking at other players at that position like Juice Wells and some other names, but I think Matthew Golden would be the number 1 priority target at wide receiver for the Longhorns in 2024 out of the portal. A quick word from our sponsors, and then we're talking about Jayden Daniels. Did the Heisman voters get it right with the 2023 Heisman Trophy? Today's episode of Locked On Longhorns is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. The easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports is just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. And with basketball season here, you can pick in the Specials League combo projections across football and basketball, whether it's Travis Kelce and LeBron James, whether it's Michael Penix Jr. and LaMelo Ball, whether it's Kevin Durant and Aaron Rodgers or Zach Wilson. I was just trying to make them up as fast as I could. You could do all of that on PrizePicks. They have the most creative ways to win money. PrizePicks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match of up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match of up to $100. All right, so the Heisman Trophy winner for 2023 was revealed over the weekend. It was Jayden Daniels, the quarterback from LSU, who just had a phenomenal season. And there was a lot of talk about should Jayden Daniels have won it. Maybe we're just now in the internet era where that's just going to be a thing for every award and every year where, people are going to, debate and dissect and, he should have won it or he got snubbed. That's just sports culture now, right? And I think the majority of the conversation about Jayden Daniels not deserving the Heisman or he shouldn't be the Heisman winner is because his team had 3 losses, right? So people would say that, Marvin Harrison Jr. shouldn't have been in the conversation. He shouldn't have been up there. Bo Nix lost to Michael Penix Jr. twice, so he couldn't have won it, right? So then it just became to Michael Penix Jr. and Jayden Daniels, and people were saying MPJ, right, should have won it because his team was undefeated. And Jayden Daniels should have been essentially disqualified because his team had 3 losses. And I think we're forgetting the meaning of the Heisman Trophy, or we're conflating the meaning of the Heisman Trophy with the NFL MVP award or the NBA MVP award. And even at times, those 2 awards are treated as just the best player on the best team in the sport. But those awards are asking who is the most valuable player, right? If we're trying to have a most valuable conversation, then Michael Penix Jr. probably would be the winner of that award because he is the quarterback of a 13-0 football team, right? But the Heisman is not about value. The Heisman celebrates the best and most entertaining player in college football for that individual season, right? Last year, Caleb Williams had 2 losses. Max Duggan only had 1. but we gave the Heisman to Caleb Williams because he was the better and more exciting player over the season, right? When Lamar Jackson had 3 losses in the year, we still knew far and away he was the best and most exciting player in college football. So I think everybody's trying to make this argument against Jayden Daniels that he shouldn't have won the Heisman because his team had 3 losses when it's not a most valuable player award. It's the best and most exciting player award. And he was better and more exciting than Michael Penix Jr. was in college football this year. When you look at Jayden Daniels, 3,812 passing yards, 40 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions, 95.7 QBR out of 100 on the season, 72% completion percentage, 1,134 rushing yards, and 10 touchdowns. His longest run of the year was 85 yards. When you look on passes 20-plus yards down the field, money throws, 67% completion, best in the world, 22 touchdowns to 0 interceptions, best in the world, 25.3 yards per attempt, best in the world. He led the country in total offense by 573 yards, led the country in total touchdowns, led the country in yards per attempt, passer rating, and passer efficiency. And when you look at the LSU offense, they led in points per game, yards per game, and yards per play. So he was by far the best player on by far the best offense in college football. And the only knock against him is we can say his team had 3 losses. Okay, so let's look at the 3 losses a little bit more closely. He lost to Florida State in the state of Florida, and Florida State did not lose a game all year, right? So somebody has to lose that football game. Florida State did not lose a game all year. I think that's a quality loss for Jayden Daniels. At Ole Miss, 55-49, an Ole Miss football team that went 10-2. So we are going to penalize Jayden Daniels for not winning a football game in which his defense gave up 55 points on the road to Ole Miss. That's a quality loss, right? And then we're looking at Alabama, who has done nothing but win 11 games in a row, win the SEC, right? And did not lose a single conference game this year. Jayden Daniels lost to Alabama on the road 42-28. So 2 of his losses were to teams that should have been in the college football playoff, or were college football playoff worthy, I should say, in Florida State and Alabama. And all 3 teams he lost to won 10 games in the regular season, right? So those are quality losses. And I'm not sure why we're hanging those over Jayden Daniels' head. And the only reason to hang losses over his head to begin with is if you're treating this as a most valuable player award rather than a Heisman trophy that just celebrates the best player in college football. And like I said, it's very clear to me that Jayden Daniels was the best player in college football this year. And then when you look at his accomplishments, and I just listed the laundry list of stats that he led the country in, and most of those stats he led in by a good margin. He also beat, when you look at the final college football playoff rankings, he was able to beat number 9 Missouri on the road. Now, I know most of us are still taking the wait and see approach with Missouri. I know most of us, don't fully respect Missouri as a great SEC team yet. A lot of people think that 10-2 might be a fluke, whatever. At the end of the day, that team went 10-2. At the end of the day, when we look at the final college football playoff rankings, they're a top 10 team in the country, and he went in there and was able to beat that team on the road, right? The only other 2 quarterbacks that were able to go on the road and beat a top 10 team based on the final college football playoff rankings were J.J. McCarthy at Penn State and Quinn Ewers at Alabama and Jayden Daniels at Missouri. And that's it. So, when you look at, the difference between Michael Penix Jr. and Jayden Daniels, Michael Penix Jr. led the country in passing. He did go 13-0, and that Washington football team is poised to win a national championship, or poised to compete for a national championship, I should say. I don't want no Texas fans unsubscribing or getting on me, but I shouldn't even say that. They're poised to compete for a national championship, while LSU, did have 3 losses, and they won't even be playing in a New Year's Six Bowl. But those are all team things, right? And I'm not going to blame Jayden Daniels for what his team was unable to do when he had an individual Heisman type season, right? Is it Jayden Daniels' fault that he made the wrong decision on where to transfer? And I'm not saying that LSU was the wrong school. Obviously, I'm sure he thoroughly enjoyed his time at LSU, as we all would, right? But If he transferred to Washington right now, is he on a 3-loss team that's not in the college football playoff? No, he's probably exactly where Washington is right now. If he transferred to Alabama, Michigan, or Texas, he's probably exactly where those teams are right now in the college football playoff. But instead, he transferred to LSU, where he had to play on a team that had a defense that was 80th in points allowed in 2023 and 104th in yards allowed in 2023. So I'm not going to penalize Jayden Daniels because his defense was bad. And I'm not going to penalize Jayden Daniels because he transferred to LSU, who has a bad defense, instead of transferring to teams like Washington, Michigan, Alabama, or Texas, who had enough pieces to get to the college football playoffs. So Jayden Daniels was by far the best quarterback in college football this year. He was by far the best player in college football this year. And I know a lot of people are saying, oh, this is just turned into a quarterback award. But if we're trying to give it to Michael Penix Jr. because he's the best quarterback on the best team, then we're essentially making it what you all say you hate, is a quarterback award. If we're going to strictly give it to the best player in college football, then we have to strictly give it to the best player in college football, regardless of how many losses their team has. And Jayden Daniels was by far the best player in college football. It wasn't close this year. The Heisman voters got it right with the 2023 Heisman Trophy. Congrats to Jayden Daniels. Congrats to the LSU football program. Well deserved. Today's episode of Locked On Longhorns is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED highlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, so I just want to go through some of the other major awards that were given out over the weekend. I want to start with the Biletnikoff Award. And I am fully aware that Marvin Harrison Jr. has the brightest projected NFL future. You know, I am fully aware that Marvin Harrison Jr. has the most name value and name recognition out of any wide receiver in college football this year. I think it was laughable that he was up on that stage for the Heisman. You know, obviously he's an amazing player. He had an amazing season, but he was not one of the 4 best players in college football this year. And I honestly think they got it wrong with the Biletnikoff. Now, if you just wanted to give Marvin Harrison Jr. the award because he's clearly the best player in college football or at that position, and that's who the award should go to, then you should have gave it to him last year, right? But you decided to give it to Jalin Hyatt, right? Because he had one game with 5 touchdowns and like 300 yards against Alabama, right? And he won the Biletnikoff that day. At least that's what the voters decided, when Marvin Harrison Jr. over the course of the season had a better season. So it felt like they came back this year with the makeup for Marvin Harrison Jr. And that's wrong, because he was not better than Malik Nabers this year. Malik Nabers was better in every category, or matched him in every category. And there's really no difference in terms of team success. You could say, you know, Ohio State lost 1 game, LSU lost 3 games, but I mean, it's a wide receiver. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know why we would even be having a losses conversation. And they played the same level of competition, if not, you know, LSU playing more competition, right? With them playing Florida State out of conference and then playing the SEC schedule. So I'm not sure what gave Marvin Harrison Jr. the edge over Malik Nabers that had to do with football, right? When you look at it, 67 catches for 1,211 yards, 18.1 yards per carry, and 14 touchdowns. Amazing season for Marvin Harrison Jr. But Malik Nabers had 18 more catches. Malik Nabers had 330 more yards. Malik Nabers averaged the same amount of yards per catch. And Malik Nabers had the same amount of touchdowns at Marvin Harrison Jr. What is the justification for Marvin Harrison Jr. to win the Biletnikoff Award over Malik Nabers this year, other than he has more name recognition and he's going to be drafted higher, right? There is no real justification that took place on the football field for Marvin Harrison Jr. to win this award over Malik Nabers. So, you know, like I said, if they just wanted to give him the award to give it to him, they should have gave it to him last year over Jalin Hyatt, because he actually had a better case and could have said he deserved it. This year, there was no case for anybody outside of Malik Nabers, and it I feel bad for him, and hopefully he goes on to have a long and storied football career in the NFL. But we always say you can't take these things away from people. Championships, awards, you get immortalized, right? He would forever be the 2023 Biletnikoff Trophy winner. He would forever be able to say, I was the best wide receiver in the country in 2023. And they took that away from him to give it to Marvin Harrison Jr. because he's more popular. And I just don't agree with that. And I don't think that's fair. Malik Neighbors deserved that award, and he was robbed because Marvin Harrison Jr., his dad played in the NFL, played at a really high level. All right, now we're talking about the Doak Walker Award. And this was Ollie Gordon's award to lose. We knew coming down the stretch that Ollie Gordon was going to win this award, especially when Jonathan Brooks unfortunately tore his ACL against TCU. And Ollie Gordon had a really good season, 1,940 total yards and 21 touchdowns. And I think he was deserving of the award, right? And I will say, there was a lot of, animosity and hate and vitriol thrown Ollie Gordon's way over the weekend when the awards came out. And I just really didn't understand it. Some from Texas fans and, Texas fans were screaming, oh, he only had 34 yards in the title game. Texas has the third best run defense in the country. So somebody's strength has to win, right? You know what I mean? You win against one of the best defenses in the country. It's going to happen, right? I remember Bijan last year against TCU couldn't do anything in the run game. I remember Bijan last year against Alabama couldn't do anything in the run game. And he still was very deserving of the Doak Walker Award. It happens. And then there's a lot of people throwing hate and vitriol at him saying, well, you only won it because Jonathan Brooks got hurt. Well, if we remember last year, right, at the time that Blake Corum got hurt, he was the leading candidate for the Doak Walker Award. And then he got hurt, and rightfully so. Bijan Robinson stepped up as the leading candidate and ultimate winner. So Ollie Gordon had a really good season. I know he ran around screaming F Texas before the game, but I just thought that all of the hate and all the stuff thrown his way on social media over the weekend was a bit much. He deserved the award. He did not have any control over Jonathan Brooks getting hurt, and he went against the third best rush defense in the Big 12 title game. That does not make him the best. That does not mean he was not the best running back in the country this year over the course of the full season. He certainly was. Congrats to Ollie Gordon, Oklahoma State, everybody involved with him winning that award. And then, like I say, the best for last, the Outland Trophy to T'Vondre Sweat, the best interior lineman. I will say I have never really paid attention to this award before, and it was hilarious to me to see T'Vondre Sweat even up for this award with two offensive linemen, right? Two interior linemen. But you had to give it to T'Vondre Sweat. When I watch football, I think I watch football like most people. I watch the quarterback, and I watch the skill positions, and then I watch the play progress. You know what I mean? And I don't spend a bunch of time really looking in the trenches, right? So sometimes, like when you have a really talented player, like I'm a Cowboys fan, so sometimes I'll make myself watch, like Tyron Smith or Zach Martin. Like for a play, I'll just focus in on them so I can see, what a Hall of Famer reps look like, right? You know what I mean? Or if I'm watching on the defensive side, sometimes I'll just, key in on Micah and I'll just watch him, right? And I started to do that with Texas, right? Like on certain reps. So let me look at Christian Jones because I interviewed him, right? I'm biased, right? Let me look at Kelvin Banks and see why he's regarded as one of the best left tackles in the country. One thing I did not have to do is specifically look at the defensive line to watch T'Vondre Sweat because he was jumping off my screen, right? And when you look at defensive tackles, it's really hard for them to have a huge impact because most of their job is clearing up space for the linebackers behind them and everybody to make plays, right? But T'Vondre Sweat was clearly the best defensive player on our team and was clearly the best defensive player in the conference and was clearly the best interior lineman in the country because he just jumped off your screen every time you watched him, right? And you just saw this 6'4", 360-pound dude just making plays, just week in and week out. Every time you turned on the tape, every time you turned on Texas play, you just saw T'Vondre Sweat going crazy, right? Whether it was, collapsing the pocket and getting to the quarterback, stopping the run inside, getting outside and stopping the run, blocking, field goals. He just did it all this year, catching touchdowns. He was, a complete player. It's crazy to think that T'Vondre Sweat's name, was in, I don't want to say Heisman conversations, but I saw Heisman rankings with T'Vondre Sweat's name at the bottom of the list, right? So, hey, we can always say that he was in the Heisman conversations, but nonetheless, the Outland Trophy winner, so deserved for T'Vondre Sweat. He has meant so much to this Texas football team on and off the field, production on the field, restoring this program, restoring the culture, restoring the winning attitude. This program will be in great shape for years to come, even after T'Vondre Sweat leaves, just because of the contributions he made. So so happy for him and his family, so happy for the Texas football team, happy for Bo Davis and everybody involved that helped T'Vondre Sweat become the 2023 Outland Trophy winner. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Locked On Longhorns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hook 'em. Peace.